and you don't hear about it in legislation about loss of control, but it is of massive importance. The other pieces of film I have flying the drones that I have don't show something, with the tarantula particularly, and wasn't really talked about. That happens to be which way the drone is pointing. This, I've painted some red on the two front parts of the Tarantula X6. Now, at a distance, even at 100 metres, I can see whether that's white on one side and red on the other, so I have a good idea of where it's pointing. The previous pieces of film that I did didn't show particularly much, and it didn't speak about the fact that part of the loss of control when the tarantula went out there was because I didn't know which direction I was pointing it, in logical terms of operating the control stick for the direction, which is the right-hand control stick. Right, so we're going to try this again using that colour that's been painted on. You'll see that with the 353, the large one, or the V686, they usually come with red and black blades, and you need to check which direction it's pointing. It's no good looking at the camera, it's too small to understand that, and too featureless in terms of colour. So this one doesn't actually matter right now. I'm not going to fly this one. We'll see how I go using the V353. With a little bit of wind leading the now, not too bad, but that's it about obstacles. It seems to be just a bit easier to fly. Not the greatest. And there's some wind. But I'm getting familiar with it. Hello all, this is Nice Phaetog, the old Nick. Nice Phaetog was my old name. Today this is about drone legislation and the reason in Australia and the United States that they slap massive restrictions on these things. These things here are three types of drones. This one here is a toy drone, it's a V686. It's very small compared to the 353. You can see there's twice the blade area and around twice the length of blade compared. This is about 3 or 4 times the weight of this smaller one. There are some problems about drone legislation. That the reason it was formed in 2015, a new set of legislation in Australia occurred, and these devices were required to fly no closer than 5 kilometres from an airfield, no more than 100 metres in height, and the reason why, for the main point, is that various people either suffered damage or injury from out of control drones. Unfortunately, legislators are a bit of a swine. They don't play with these devices, they don't use these devices for any purpose. I got this for searching for bees in forests. This is the first drone I had that I tested, and I found that even in a light breeze it comes out of control, and that's mainly what they're worried about. Now, yeah, there are idiots that will fly a drone at an aircraft or try to fly it past an aircraft, but the main problem is that people being injured by these blades when they spin has the problem that the device, when it's out of control, can cause damage and injury. One more feature of this is there's a building behind me, no more than 30 metres from a building. That's really a suburban area urban rule. There's no great point in it, in obeying it out here on a rural property. However, there is an airfield about 3.5 kilometres away. But one more feature about Australian law in terms that US don't particularly have is this device here, when I got it, has FPV. It means the camera operates with this type of controller, and that's an FPV screen. That means it's first person view. You can view what the camera is showing while it's in flight. Now, there is a problem in this, is I don't consider FPV a heck of a lot of help, except flying up and down trees with a good camera. So the trouble we have here in Australia is that legislators couldn't care less what they did to stop some things. That a person was slashed by blades from a device like this, whether it was octocopter or quadcopter. It was a drone, one of these electronic devices that are radio controlled. And the main reason at all times is these devices aren't particularly controllable. Or are they? This isn't. This can't take much of a breeze of wind. There's a number of features, and the main feature I'm trying to point out here about loss of control is these types of batteries. They're rechargeable batteries, as opposed to, say, a lithium battery which will only go 2 to 3 flights in a controller like that. What you're looking at, if you were looking at lithium batteries, is paying something like $60 for 8 batteries or 6 batteries. The controllers generally use 6 batteries. They're throwaway. You'll only fly twice with that safely. After a point, the aircraft, whether it's this size or this size, goes out of control. So there is the problem that unfortunately these things are a bit expensive unless you buy rechargeable batteries. Now, the trouble with rechargeable batteries, of course, is would they cost? Well, it depends. There are some on the market that are not particularly expensive, but these you can import from eBay or AliExpress for about $10 a set. Just a bit of a change in the film here. As you've noticed, some batteries are missing from there. The camera ran out of fuel on it. These things here are ordinary batteries. They won't do for a controller. Never use them in a controller, always use rechargeable. Rechargeable batteries, whether they're even lithium, it doesn't matter. Don't ever use lithiums in there. It's too expensive and you only get 2 flights. This thing here is a rechargeable battery from China, the same place the drones come from. It's 3000 milliampere hour, that means 3 ampere hour. They charge to around about 1.8 volt. It takes about 3 or 4 hours to charge them. On one of these types of chargers, you can get them on eBay or AliExpress. They seat 2 batteries, one on either side. The mid one is for AAA batteries, so you can effectively charge 4 batteries. But they have this feature here, which is a little bit dangerous. That's a sort of a UK pin converting to an Australian. The pin down here for a charger, however, that's a round pin, that's a European one, and there is an adapter for that I haven't brought out to adapt to the Australian power supply. But they're all around 230, 240 volt is the transformer, or the MOSFET downgrades it to 1.5 volt or 1.8 volt. So when these batteries are full, they're around about 1.8 volt. That's the type you use in here. Those will run for about 10 sessions. What I was about before was loss of control. The controller here, if it can't tell this what to do because it's 100 metres away, then you have no hope, and that will be it with flat batteries if you use ordinary batteries or lithium batteries. It takes no time whatsoever because these transmit in a super high frequency. What the trouble with a super high frequency is the number of oscillations at full power to reach each cycle is millions of times more than lower frequencies. So of course it takes a huge quantity more energy, more battery power, to generate the signal. So consequently, these go flat in minutes. You can be in loss of control from a set of batteries that you buy off the shelf within the first flight. Within the first flight, you can find that this is not responding properly, starting and stopping, only hearing some of the time the control action you want it to hear, and a light breeze is just taking it away. When a light breeze takes one of these away, when the batteries are low, as far as the drone battery itself, that's a drone battery there, that's for the bigger model. It's got the connector for the charger, it's got the connector for the discharger. This model here, the toy one, only has one in and out, the same connector. It's a much smaller, thinner battery. That there is a 3.7 volt battery. It's for small drones. There are various, there are 11 volt, there's 3 volt, 4 volt and 7 volt batteries. They're all a LiPo lithium battery, long period, high discharge, deep cycle. Now, the trouble with losing control, of course, is what happens. You get legislators getting statistics saying this device here, this device, which is this device to them, and this device to them, all because it looks the same, it's all the same sort of size to them, is out of control, worrying animals, people, and harming people, damaging buildings, and being a general nuisance. The only real nuisance in Australia is considered to be the FPV, but that itself isn't all that real in a forest, isn't all that real on a rural property either. It doesn't transmit very far from the aircraft, and the aircraft really has to be flown in line of sight. Happens to be another law. I don't know, in the United States it doesn't appear to be required to be flown line of sight, but that's their business and that. But this thing goes 300 metres, that only goes about 80 metres. That's a toy drone. It's a much smaller blade area for the power. Much smaller battery, so there's only a couple of minutes of enough power to fight a light breeze. This here is a much more interesting device. It's a third generation drone, and you'll recognise the propellers just a piece on that one. They're similar to what's known as a DJI Phantom. The pitch of the blades and the distance they are out has a strange curve in them. If I can sort of move that around. Now, with that one, that has much better aerodynamics for harnessing the power. This has much less, but it's powerful enough. It's very similar to this one. But you'll find in flight this responds much better than this red and black version here. That it doesn't take much more power to move this and to raise it into the air and to fly it. This actually you need to apply power with. These two are about the same weight. That's a derivative of that. That one is a bit like a DJI Phantom, but it's whatever it is. In effect, that one there is a toy. In effect, this one is some form of professional drone. It's really in between a toy and a professional drone. And the main thing I'm trying to point out here is that this type of propeller here is like fuel efficiency. It operates much better. This one here, it operates better than this one only because the propellers have a much higher blade area, so that it works much better. This is a much fatter battery and a higher voltage than this. So there's much more power in the larger battery there, and it goes inside these much larger in between drones, in between professional and in between a toy. That's a toy drone. That there is almost the trouble. The main feature of most people crashing happens to be using it in an unsensible place and not understanding that a toy drone doesn't have much power. Until you have something like the power and the abilities and the battery power of one of these. This is a Tarantula, and it's, like I said, it's a third generation drone. Once you have the power of something like a Tarantula there, which is twice the size of a toy drone, it's not a mini drone. A mini drone is about a quarter of the size, even a tenth of the size of a toy drone. Then you have the power to fight light wind. This one will in fact fight light wind very easily. This one fights light wind as long as you only go up into it for about 3 to 5 minutes with a full battery. And that's another feature of losing control. The power supplied to your quadcopter comes from one of these batteries. The last half of the power in the battery isn't very good. It should be used for bringing the drone back and landing it. So they say the whole flight can last, say, 8 minutes. I'd say about 5 minutes from that. So 2.5 minutes of flight, maybe 3 minutes of flight, the other 2 minutes to bring it back to fight any wind coming back, so that you could put that down near you. But that's the main reason people lose control. They don't know some of these features. You're going to spend hundreds of dollars just to fly a drone and lose control, such as a toy drone. If you ever take a toy drone outside, they're not much good. You need one a bit like these. And the third generation came along in late 2015, these bigger ones, with particular reference to the Tarantula again there. And those were half the price, or about the same price of what that was at the beginning of 2015. So that's about $250. And with the FPV, that one there was about $250 without any FPV, but with a camera and one battery. Right, that there, believe it or not, I got these half price, any one of them half price. That was about $160. That was just under 200. That was over 200. It was with extra batteries. I've got extra batteries in there. That was a different deal. Right, these two don't have FPV. The toy one does. The toy one I wanted to fly up and down trees to see if I could find stingless bees and other bees that were nesting inside the trees that go up 40 metres, some of the very tall trees around in rural areas and forests. Now, with this sort of feature, unfortunately, it turns out that if you want to give your child a drone to fly it outside, don't give them one of these. These at least now are much cheaper and much better and much more responsive. The only thing you will need to understand is you get 3 minutes of safe flight if there's any form of light wind or light breezes around. That's what the trouble happens to be. Understand that no throwaway batteries, including lithium, will ever do for a controller, because it chews too much. You must have three of these types of rechargers, so that they seat 2 AA batteries each, so that you can put 6 batteries in there with 3000 milliampere hour. That's 3 ampere hour 1.5 volt batteries, just like these sorts of things. That does for a point, but it's 1.5 volt. No one tells you these things, so everyone that's been creating the statistics has been going out with these throwaway batteries, and it's been out of control after the first time. They did not tell you that only half the period of time is safe for flight of any drone, because it has enough power to drive its props to fight wind or breeze. But these are so lightweight, these standard smaller drones, that they're no good for outside. They really must be a heavier one like this Tarantula that's double the size. That there is about 1 foot across, from at least 1 foot across from the central point of the propeller to the next central point of the propeller. That's only about 15, 18 centimetres across in the small toy drone, which is a standard sort of drone to buy. It's not a nano drone or a mini drone. It's just a drone, just a toy drone. That's about 15 to 18 centimetres across there, from the midpoint of the axis of the prop to the next axis of the prop. It's no good. It's too lightweight. It can't fight a light breeze, particularly when the battery power has been half used. So that's only got about 2.5, 3 minutes worth of flight. That's only got about 3 or 4 minutes worth of flight. That's only got about 3 or 4 minutes worth of flight in which it can fight mild wind, very light wind, not a breeze. A heavy breeze or light wind, these two can fight. And they're about 30 centimetres from one tip to the other, or maybe 25, from the central axis of the prop to the other one. Now, that being the final trouble with these legislators, it all came from loss of control. That there is loss of control. That one you can at least give it to your kid. You can at least find them on special in AliExpress or eBay, and that will severely reduce the level of loss of control if you understand about the batteries being a very, very heavy feature of these, not merely the weight of the aircraft, needing to be more than a toy drone. That's what happened to us all. We had all of these problems. There are sensible places to fly these things and not sensible places, but these large any drones have been banned from plenty of public parks. One of the greatest problems in public parks, of course, is other people. Animals can run and jump on these sorts of things. I've got a dog in there, and he's inside right now. He's a very large guy. If he stepped on any of them, I'm not sure he didn't do that one though. If he stepped on any of these, he'd break it. That's the end of that. Any of them, even a small Shih Tzu or something, could just basically wreck one of these. So you need to lock your animals up while you're using it. Like I say, don't forget that these things here require adapters, but the main adapter to get is a European adapter. Those are round pins on the charger that you get sent. They either send the European ones or they send what would be British on those. And the British one is just two uprights, and the Australian system isn't an angle, but it always comes in with some sort of adapter. The final point behind all of this is that these things need one more feature about the person who flies it. There are things called children, there are things called adults. So if your child is under 16 years of age, sure, give him one of these more powerful ones, but you'll have to supervise anyway. There's no such thing as something below the age of 16 that will necessarily at any one moment be responsible. That means that they will take into account all of the things they should or should not do, have any great judgment of whether anything's dangerous or not. And the final feature of that point too is that when you use these things, you can reasonably figure not to get them near aircraft, helicopters, other drones, other people, animals, electricity wires, and things that can be a danger. Things that can cause accidents, such as not flying them over roadways, not unless you're out in a rural property and you can clearly understand that there's nothing between here and there, and that's that. They're not going to reach that in a hurry. And that if a car comes along, it's no good throwing yourself in front of it because there's dust and wind blowing around. You'll just have to lose it if something goes over the top of it before everything becomes a mess. The final point in all of it is that that is all the legislators thought of. This thing crashes. Loss of control is up to the person flying it. There are ways of understanding these things won't be out of control, such as understanding whether they can handle the environment they're in. Because they're more of an outdoor machine, these are too light. No one explained that. No one explained that you are better off buying from eBay or AliExpress a large wad of 3000 milliampere hour, that's 3 ampere hour, 1.5 volt AA batteries for the controllers, and some chargers. 3 chargers, that's just over $30. And that sometimes comes with batteries. It depends on the deal you get when you look on eBay or AliExpress. The batteries generally are given as a deal, at least one battery with the device. It's better to get a deal where you get 3 or 4 batteries. And you get a charger too, and to understand you might need an adapter for the charger, and you will tell them what sort of pin. That's a European pin, that round one. They're easy to find an adapter for in a supermarket that will adapt to whatever version you require to plug in. These you're supposed to specify on eBay what sort of adapter, because that's the adapter for the charger. So you need at least 3 chargers, because a controller normally has 6 batteries. The final point, as I've said again, is the person controlling it. The person controlling it should learn to fly it. There is a little problem with these, that they have a normal, reasonably standard control set. This here is your throttle. It's on the left-hand side usually. When you start the binding, you'll hear that sort of a noise, and it'll stop. Then you push, before you get it to work, you push the throttle full forward, nothing should happen. When you bring it back, that should beep, but the beep means that it binds. You didn't get a beep that time because it's not switched on. The top left hand is usually your video camera button. The circuit boards inside these have various appliance attachments, whether there's a camera, it's just a clip. You see the wire going in and out there. Whoops, down here. See the wire going in and out. That goes up to the circuit board, and it just has a connector, and there are various abbreviations on the circuit board that tell you what system that's hooked up to. These are all hooked up to a camera. The main thing to do though with these controls is learn to fly them, and that of course requires an open space, and that also requires no one else and no other quadcopters being around, so that they won't bind their radio controls to yours. They do have a bit to understand whether other quadcopters are around and whether those frequencies are in use for that quadcopter. But the main point again is that this thing here, unfortunately, the toy one, is a bit of a loser unless you fly it inside, which is really the sort of legalities of the toy one. You need these third generations, which have got cheaper, and you can probably find one on special, but they're usually around about a foot between axles of the propellers. The toy ones are just too small and too lightweight, and they've been what created the legislation that somebody's gone, wow, smaller is cheaper or better, which is not really true, and I'll give it to my kid, and my kid can learn how to fly it. And I couldn't care less, and I'll go inside, drink beer, watch the sport on the TV, and he can go and smash everyone's windows. Don't do that. You must supervise them. And if you gave them something that you fly outside anyway, give them one of these. Much larger. They're cheaper on the market than they ever were before. Use rechargeable batteries only. It's only the first half of the specified flight time that you use. So say you get 5 minutes flight, well, you got 2.5 minutes flight, only because the batteries are too powerless after that point to fight wind. So if you've taken the distance out, say you've bought one that goes 100, 130 metres, and you've sent it out 60 metres at ground, from ground level and up about 50 metres, it's about 100, 130 metres. There's a thing called trigonometry to understand, of right angle triangles. When you have something at an altitude, it's at an angle. That makes that a longer distance than the ground distance to the point underneath it. All those factors need to be understood. There's one more factor to understand though that's important in control and flying them. I'll see if I can focus that close enough. In the corner you'll see 40%. Over here you'll see 100%. It's one of these buttons. Yeah, that's it. Now it's flashing 100%. That 100% on the console there says you have 100% transmitter power. This is transmitting the full distance. When it transmits the full distance, then you have the full control. So if you're outside and you have a 130 range, 130 metre range device, put it to 100%, because at 40% you only have about 40 metres of control. So easy enough to understand, but make sure you have the power correct. That way you can at least have the slightest chance of these types of things not going out of control. So they don't really matter. If someone sees an aircraft, they generally don't want their quadcopter wrecked. They want to fly it somewhere else and have it some other day. So they'll steer it away from the aircraft, but you can't do that until they're big enough and heavy enough to fight wind. You can't do that if you can't control it because you have no charge in your batteries, whether it's the quadcopter battery or whether it's the rechargeable batteries for the controller, and the power of the transmitter needs to be at 100% so that you can bring that back from the range that you were told is the final transmission range for the furthest distance you can take your quadcopter from the controller. So the main point, after you understand these things are all possible to totally control properly, the final one is learn how to fly it. It is a bit difficult, and this one here with its propeller system responds much better. That's very similar to the DJI Phantom propeller system. That there has much better lift for much less power. That, I hope, has helped you in understanding why you crashed your quadcopter. Why you crashed your quadcopter and why your quadcopter didn't work and why we all lost these things. About privacy and cameras, well, the only reason for quadcopters often is cameras and a good view and a good pic. And that's about the only thing you can really put on a quadcopter in this country. I wouldn't say some things matter much if they were there or not as an attachment. But the trouble with them really happens to be that that's a different issue. It's like the issue of mobile phones and whether anyone films incidents in public. That's up to, some of these things are a piece up to the discretion, but they totally ruined these in legislation, without understanding that's a toy that has problems. No one told you about the batteries, no one told you about the transmitter range buttons, no one taught you how to control it, which is not all that difficult. No one told you about how batteries discharge as far as the heavy deep cycle lithium specialist lithium battery. That is the only battery you can put inside the version of quadcopter that you have, and about other appliances such as chargers and voltage, main source voltage for the power supply to drive the charger. It's around the same in Europe, Britain and Australia. Australia uses 240 volts. Europe and Britain, I think, is 230 volts. United States, some places are 120 volts. But we don't need to know about the 120 volt ones here. Well, that about wraps it up. But you buy the heavier ones and you supervise your kids if they're under 16 years of age. And you give them the lecture if they are between 16 and 18 years, 16, 17 years old. But there's nothing to it. That's the better one of the two, the Tarantula there. That's a V353. It's not bad either, actually. Both of them here are armed with a 1080p camera. And they're quite a nice view. Wobbles around a little bit, but I'm figuring ways of making a better picture. So in the next set of film, rather than show you these bits and pieces, if I get a bit of wind, I'll be showing you what happens when you take these up in wind. And perhaps I'll fly it beside the weather station so you can understand the speed the wind is actually occurring. Some trees and some leaves to show you what happens when one of these is brought up off the ground and how difficult it is to get them off the ground. With this one the engine screams, with this one the engine screams but not much, but it's got plenty of lift. And with this one it doesn't take much change in engine speed to have this going up into the air very quickly. So it's difficult to control because it's powerful, but that's just the efficiency of the propellers, because they're based on a fully professional model that utilises aerodynamics very severely. Hope you enjoyed the video, and hope you can fly these things more safely and without being bothered and without bothering anyone else. But the legislators are a bit of a swine and a nasty idiot that didn't check why these types of accidents occurred. Well, here we are. I've got this is the small toy quadcopter. As you can see, the blades down low near touch the grass, and just happening to be using this one with the first person view there. Let's see if you can see all of that there. The mechanism by which it binds is you switch it on. It's at 40% power, and that now has a full battery in it. This one, after it binds, when you move it forward the first time, it's running. Now that's sort of about 1/3 throttle there. Now we've got no breeze, and the weather station up there might be able to be seen through the tree leaves, but you can hear the adjustment of the power. See that? Bang. You don't know where that one ended up, but that's fine. That's what it's all about. So there is a light breeze around. That's full power. It's the Tarantula. Let's move that forward on the control. Now it's ready to start. You see that? Doesn't take much power. So with the Tarantula, move it to full 100%, bring it back and it should beep. Now we've got that sorted out. Binded. That's a nasty thing to do, but like I said, they're about half the price about these days. Bit of wind coming through, blowing it sideways. Well, I've got it that far. Take number 5,379, but I'm not familiar with it. I've only flown it 3 or 4 times also. reasonably simple device. Very crudely and fundamentally and quickly performed. There it is again. And that's often what occurs because of the power. Now that's much more powerful, that one, and it's a great way to end the point. It takes quite a bit of space, and that's the type of problem. Now, that's doing that during wind, and I don't say there's any great problem. No, not the greatest landing, was it? But that's the type of point to it. I don't know if you can see that or not. Just there. So it is much easier to control that tarantula there. It's about the 5th time I've ever flown it. The other 3 or 4 were tests. All of them are really tests. But that is the type of power that you don't even get anywhere near inside the toy drone. Okay, well, I'll get around to the next. Now we have the V353. There, the binding. Let's see if this one does okay. Not the best, but it is a little bit easier to handle than the tarantula. Boom. Okay, so not bad. This little trick, when you know you're going to hit something, cut the power, because the blades weigh absolutely nothing. So it's not very easy to take off with all those leaves there. Quite a heavy device, and it does have some difficulty controlling it. Some of that problem there is due to air pressure. Bang. Now, like I say, I cut the blades. I've only driven that one 3 or 4 times too. And these are some impressive stacks, and that's what the trouble is. They're very difficult to control, but if you thought you'd get that out of a V686, then think again. It just is too lightweight, the propellers are too small, the engines don't beat fast enough. That's 353. There you go, bit of a dump landing, but that's it. Okay, here we are again. One thing I didn't mention about loss of control. You'll notice that the previous day with the Tarantula, it wandered around a piece. That's because I haven't painted a couple of red sections on the front of it, so that I can see which direction it's pointing. You'll notice on the V353 it has red propellers. And those are usually said in the instruction manual to put them on at the front of it, whatever that might be. You can see that there is a central pointing direction either backwards or forwards in these things, but forward relates to the reaction of the machine from how you push the control button, which is the right one. This controls where the direction where the drain goes. Now, that makes quite a difference, because at 100 metres you don't really know whether you're going to fly forward, backwards, or keep going further away. And these colours here up in the air can be seen quite easily. So I now know whether I've got one that's red and one that's white pointing on toward me by the side of it, side onto me, or whether I've got both red or both white. It's quite easy to distinguish. And we're again here in a not very sensible place. Be flying because there is a bit of light breeze around today, which makes it impossible for a 686, but a 686 is really impossible outside. There are overhanging tree branches, poles, fence, wires, and we'll see if we can get out of here at all. And we'll see if we can fly it somewhere in your sight. That's what wind does. It causes immense problems. Unfortunately, it causes immense problems. But not much of one this time. Well, we got it off the ground, and you may have seen it fly a little piece, but it is a point that it does help to be able to see where this is actually facing. And that, thankfully, wasn't much of a hard landing. Now there's wind coming in front of it. Hard landing, but not too bad. What around here? Trees, wind. Don't think you would have seen much